Hello.
Hello, I'm here.
You're here. I'm here.
Yep.
Okay. Everybody's here.
Everyone's here.
Yep.
Their audience is here. That's everyone.
That's
That's
another early morning attempt here. This
Yeah,
one
yeah.
this one might be a race against the clock. I have my baby monitor and I'm watching my kid here, so let's hope we can
Yeah.
get some good time in.
Bam.
Bam.
Oh, you remember those Pop-Tart commercials?
Do I? It's still like
Bam.
I can't help but quote that like almost daily still. It's like the unfunny joke that won't die that no
Yeah.
one gets.
Yeah, it's like you and me and like maybe
Like,
a couple other
yeah,
people.
5 other people that are exactly the same age and roll their eyes.
Yeah. So one thing that I was curious about is we've both moved around a number of times. Did you go straight from Canada to Japan?
I did Canada, Japan, Canada, Japan, Canada, USA.
Okay. And I've done Canada, Australia, Canada, US, UK, US, Canada.
Canada, Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah, or soon to be
Damn,
Canada.
Yeah.
You're finally
What-
staying in the same
I'm-
country.
Yeah. So one thing that I've been curious about that is video games and movies are slightly different from books. You can take a book with you and you can play it on any set of eyes in any country. But you can't necessarily take a Nintendo cartridge and play that on every Nintendo from every country. And you can't necessarily buy a game in one country and then buy DLC in another country.
Region lock, man.
Yeah, region lock. So I'm wondering, has that affected you in any way?
It certainly has.
I'm
So
I'm glad that's the answer. Not, no.
no. Sorry, what are we talking about again this week? So, so this goes back. It goes back to what we talked about last time for me, where when we were growing up, it's like all the games were from Japan.
Yeah.
And so I got this idea in my head, which is very silly, and especially now that I'm older, it's very silly. But like for me, it was like video games are a Japanese thing. So
Yeah.
it's something I want to experience in Japanese. It's almost like imagine you were this crazy film buff and you spoke like French and you spoke Italian and you spoke all these languages. If you were watching an Italian movie and it was really important to you that you watch this movie, in its real form or something, you'd probably just watch it. Like you wouldn't watch the dubbed one because you happen to be living in America at the time or something. And I mean, everyone feels different about this, and it's not even like it's almost a trivial thing. But I don't know. Just a long time ago, it was like, well, I want to play them in Japanese. That's it. That's the original
Well, I
release
mean,
of these games.
Stuff gets lost in translation, right?
It does get lost in translation, and also, I mean, there's a lot of censorship back in the
Yeah.
like Super Nintendo days. So like, I found it was always this huge treasure to like get the Japanese version and look at all this stuff that was cut and whatever, right? And I mean, Japanese text, like the actual game cartridge storing all the characters takes a lot of room, but once you have all the different characters, like the actual text takes less room than English text, in terms of just characters. So that's what led to a lot of cut dialogue in games too. So playing the Japanese games for me growing up was always special. So I'm going all over the place here, but what I'm getting at is the majority of my game collection is just Japanese games, which
Right.
I don't know, it's just fun for me, I guess. And that even now, on the console side anyway, persists. So I mean, I buy a lot of Steam games. They tend to be English only, but there are multi-language games, but very few of those are like Japanese games. But for my console collection, obviously I have like Famicom games. Those don't work on an NES. I have like Japanese 3DS games, Japanese GameCube games. Like I have a lot of games that you need the Japanese version of the console, and it's
Right.
a pain because it's easy. Like I have a good Famicom collection, but then as the systems get newer and newer, like PlayStation 2 is about half and half,
Yeah.
and so I need 2 PlayStation 2s set up,
Yeah.
which is a huge pain.
Yeah.
And then like 3DS, there was a special edition of 3DS released in Japan that we were going to buy. But at the
Is
time,
that
all
the
my
one that looked like the Super Nintendo?
yeah. But at the time, all my 3DS games, well, of course, I'd go for that, right? All my 3DS games were the US games, so I wouldn't be
Yeah.
able to play them. So
Yeah.
I mean, Whereas like I think it's what the first DS.
The first three Game Boys, the
Yeah.
original Game Boy, the Game Boy Advance, and the DS, they were, none of them were region locked.
Which was awesome. And I think, I
Yeah.
forget, there was like some weird justification. Like, you're meant to travel with it, so you can just pick up games
Yeah.
anywhere. And I thought that was
Yeah.
cool. And I don't know why they just kind of dropped that. I mean, I guess they probably realized no one was
Because
like.
because the downloadable stuff, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. There's probably a multitude of reasons, but that was a fun attitude to take, I thought. And it was cool. And I mean, like, Game Boy actually is a good example because I have a lot of Japanese and American games. And I don't even know where my Game Boys are from. I don't care. Like, I can just play
Yeah.
any of them on any of them. So it's definitely affected me in that sense, like on the collecting side. I think your experience has been more like kind of the digital games and what works and what doesn't when you move countries. Correct me if I'm
Yeah,
wrong.
to an extent. Yeah, to an extent. I mean, that's been part of it too. Is like, particularly in the past year, like you said, I've been interested in getting some Japanese games, and it's the same thing where for the 3DS, I would have to buy a new 3DS in order to do that, right? So it is good because I can play some of the old Game Boy games and Game Boy Advance, and so particularly they've released like Zelda games and River City Ransoms and stuff on the Game Boy Advance that were originally on the Nintendo. So I could go back and get some of the original Famicom. I think they actually call those Famicom Mini. So it's kind of tricky because with the new mini family computer versus the Famicom Mini,
Yeah.
it's sometimes hard to Google search stuff that's meaningful.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's been a little bit of difficulty with that, with country hopping, because some countries have different displays as well.
Yeah.
So like in the UK, like you would have had PAL versus NTSC over in North America. Is it NTSC in Japan?
It is, yes.
Okay, so at least there wasn't that hurdle for you. Like,
Yeah,
if you'd grown up in rural Scotland instead of rural New Scotland,
yeah.
you would have had to import a TV as well
I
as
know,
a console, right?
Yeah. Well, one interesting thing is that the original Famicom, you probably know this little bit of trivia, but it didn't have like the component output. It only had it went into the cable antenna or whatever.
The RF.
Yeah, and the television frequencies in Japan were different. So I think you'd put it on like channel 2 in Japan, which corresponds to nothing in North America, right? So the only way to make it work is if you had one of those like really old TVs where you had to like tune the channels to a specific frequency. Because then you would literally tune it to this non-existent frequency that the Famicom worked on, and you're good. So, like all my Famicoms, I do have a couple like classic, hardwired controller Famicoms, but I use the new Famicom because it has the AV output. Wonderful system, but there's another way that I guess I've been slightly affected. I just can't play those original Famicoms here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was weird because like I was kind of aware that was different for Australia. I don't know if they're necessarily PAL, but I know
Australia,
at least
I think is PAL, aren't they?
I think it is PAL.
There's another one, SECAM or something, SECAM. It's like in France, and Australia might be that. I don't remember.
Well, I know the displays are a different resolution, so it must have been PAL, and I know that the plugs are a different wattage as well.
Yep.
So when it came time for me to move from Toronto to Australia, I was just like, this is stupid. Like, not only are none of my consoles going to work, but shipping them there is going to be expensive, and the more space that I'm paying to store my stuff for here, the more expensive it is, and so that was kind of the point for me where I started just getting rid of all my old consoles. Like, I got rid of my Super Nintendo and Nintendo and PlayStation 1 and all the games that went with it. And I put the PlayStation 2 into storage because there were still like Shadow of the Colossus and Kingdom Hearts and stuff on that I felt like I would go back to pretty soon. So I put that into storage. But the PlayStation 3 actually... no matter where you buy that, it can be plugged into any outlet, like because it uses the same type of plug as a computer, where you can just like go to your local computer store and swap the plug.
Ah, okay.
And so the voltage that it takes is a wide range, so you can plug that in anywhere as long as you've got the correct prongs on your plug.
Right.
So
You
I
just
took
need the one converter.
Actually,
Or adapter, I guess.
yeah. Actually, I'm both right and wrong on that. I'm right in that it would have worked for me in Australia, but I'm wrong in that I didn't take it with me.
Okay.
I ended up putting that into storage because I just figured like the cost of shipping everything there. I was only planning on being there for a year.
Yeah.
It just didn't make sense. So I ended up leaving the PlayStation 3 there, but I had done all the research into it. So I know one of my friends had been affected by that because he brought his to Australia, and then he realized that the plugs didn't fit and he wouldn't be able to use it. And I told him the information. It's like, no, wait. The voltage is fine as long as you get the plug and put it in. It'll work fine. So he did, and he was quite happy with that. He bought some games, and the problem he had is then he moved to Canada, and the games all still worked, but he created a new...
like PSN account or something.
Yeah, you create a new PSN account depending on where you're living, like because
Yep.
you know you have to, it ties to a credit card. So
That was a problem for me coming to America, yeah.
yeah, so he bought something with the Australian credit card on the Australian account, went to Canada, no longer had an Australian credit card, made a Canadian account, bought DLC for the game, and of course the DLC doesn't work because they're two different regions.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's definitely a bit of frustration when you're like a nomad like us, is that when you go to different countries, it's easy to fall into stuff like that where you buy something in one region and then can't play it.
And that's one of the big frustrations about region locking. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know. In the modern world, I would think there's enough people moving around all over the place that this is a common enough situation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess going back to your point about like plugs and stuff, so Japan has almost the same standards as North America. They actually have a
Right.
slightly lower voltage.
Right.
Which I've heard people have said, like, if you want to bring a Japanese electronic thing to North America, you should get a converter because long term
Yeah.
it might cause damage, blah, blah, blah. I never have. I've never had any problems at all. Everything's been totally fine. So to me, they're just interchangeable. Like I would bring my electric razor to Japan and use it. It's, it doesn't even, the plug is the same. Everything works.
Yeah, it's definitely way more voltage in Australia and in the UK.
Yeah, it's double, I think. Isn't it 240 or something?
Yeah, so like I had a hard drive enclosure that has 4 hard drives in it, and I checked everything out, and that thing was designed to be able to take the wide range of voltage, and so I plugged that in Australia, and immediately a loud pop and smoke comes out of the little power bar thing.
That must have been heartbreaking.
So it was like the device itself took the wattage, but the power bar didn't.
Okay.
So I was super horrified because like I just lost 4 hard drives of everything I've ever done, and it turns out that was completely fine. My hard drives ended up being completely fine. It shorted at that box, not where the power goes in. So,
yeah.
And then all I had to do was buy a new power box, and it was fine. But yeah, that was
Terrifying, I bet.
terrifying. And it's super weird when you're going to different countries and all of a sudden you have to get the different plug adapters and the
Yep.
I forget what it's like, a step up or a step down converter or whatever for the voltage.
Yeah. Well, I was going back to what you were saying about PAL too. It's interesting. I don't know if you knew this, but the actual display frequency is different as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 50 hertz, I think. So the solution for like the original Nintendo, and I think Super Nintendo at least, was
Sega Genesis.
Yeah, was to do nothing. The games just played at a different frequency.
Yeah.
So they're different speed. That's it.
Yeah, which is really weird because apparently Sonic the Hedgehog, that's a game that's like designed to be fast, and apparently the UK got a completely different experience because they didn't compensate for the hertz.
Yeah.
And so it just plays at a different speed.
Yeah. Which is funny, definitely. For PSN, I remember it was a huge pain in the ass for me, but I don't remember maybe I like blotted it out of my memory, but I don't remember. I can't remember if I started a new account or if I just fudged around with it until it worked.
No,
But
you had to start a new account.
I think so, yeah. So like none of my games work now, of course, and it's like whatever.
They should still work.
Um,
So, because I've got a Canadian account and an American account, and I can play any of the games fine.
do you have to log into that account, like the American account, to play the games bought in the American one?
No,
So when I log in,
you have to log in to install them, I think,
So-
from whatever account.
for me, when I go to play it, it gives me some message. I forget the exact wording, but it's like, you need to go to the store and authorize this purchase. And I'm like, okay, I bought this. What are you talking about? So I go to the store, and the only option I have when I go to the store is to buy the game again. There's no authorize button. There's no anything. It doesn't point me anywhere. When it says go to the store to authorize, and there's like
Which game is that?
all of them.
All
Mega Man 10, and like there's some PlayStation 1 games I have, and some I don't even remember. Marvel vs. Capcom 2. It's just everything. It's just stopped working.
Huh.
Yeah, it sucks.
Hmm.
I've just been lazy about it, really. I mean, I meant to talk to some people or like contact Sony or something, but that's how it is right now.
And so, if you change to the other account, would it work fine though?
I don't know. I don't know that I have another account.
Because you should still be able to log in with both accounts. Like you
Yeah.
wouldn't have closed the old one. Because I mean that's how it worked for me. And I don't know if they still do that, but they used to at least let you log in on someone else's machine, right?
Yeah.
So
which I think they still do. I
yeah,
don't know.
so we've done that where you logged in on my machine at one point, so I got like Grand Theft Auto and
Yeah.
some other stuff on my account, so I can still play those, and I can still play my
Weird.
Canadian stuff, and I can still play my American stuff.
So you figured this out better than me, by the sounds
I
of it.
guess.
Yeah.
But it was weird though, because yeah, like I remember Andrea when at her job she had like a game jam or something, so she had won a Best Buy gift certificate, and so I went to use that to buy Ni no Kuni. Like I used the Best Buy certificate to get a PSN gift card. I
Okay.
guess.
Was this in the States or in Canada?
Yeah, in
Okay.
Canada or no, in the U.S.
Okay.
And so that was when I realized I can't use this PSN card because it's an American one and I have a Canadian account. So I had to create an American account so that I could use the redeem that, and I got Ni no Kuni and I think a couple other things, but
At least it worked in the end. You had that
yeah,
American account.
It did work in the end, and it's super weird now because I've got the two different accounts, and so like depending on what sales are going on, I might buy the game in one region versus buying it in another region.
Awesome.
like-
Play the system.
Yeah, because it was like I think the Suikoden games, Suikoden 1 and 2, when they were released on the PSN, they were on sale for like a couple dollars in the US, but they were like full price in Canada. So I bought them on the US and I can play them on my PSP. But
Careful.
weird-
I don't know if there's some like illegal thing happening there.
well, no, what's weird about that is that the PSP is much more region locked than the PS3 because you can only log in with one account on your PSP.
Right. So it's
So now I have
implicitly, yeah,
Yeah, so I have two PSPs now. I have one that's Canadian and one that's American,
to get around this problem.
which worked out by luck in a way because I bought a PSP on Craigslist, and I don't recommend you buy a PSP period because they're pieces of shit. Where the if you want to play the physical games, the little UMD disc reader just has an incredibly high failure rate.
Great.
So I bought that, and I was like partway through a game, and then it just stopped working. And I looked this up, and I'm like, okay, great. That's just what the PSP does. It breaks. So that was like $100 that I'd spent on that PSP, and then because it's Craigslist, I have no warranty or anything. There's nothing I can do about
Yep.
it. So it's reserved exclusively for Canadian downloads.
That did
But
work
then,
out by the sounds of it.
but then, yeah, there was someone else at work who was moving to New Zealand, and so he decided to sell off a bunch of stuff, like his router and PSP and everything, and they were all dirt cheap because he wanted to get rid of massive amounts of stuff. So I bought like a router and a PSP from him for $70 total.
Hmm.
And so now I was able to finish my games, and that one works completely fine with the disc-based games, which I've stopped buying. But so because I had the two of them, I was like, okay, well, I can just make an American account on this one, and so
Yeah, good.
it it it's really frustrating though to have situations like that, and I had a very similar situation with the 3DS
Mm.
because when I bought that in Canada,
So
and
you couldn't
it
do
was
anything with it in the States then?
no, I could at the time. I
Oh,
took that down to the U.S. You could change your region settings as much as you wanted back then. Um, but there ended up being enough people, I guess, when the Wii U came out that were they sold their Wii and bought a Wii U, and then they couldn't get any of the games back that they'd bought or and stuff because there was no like global account.
Hmm.
Or people would drop their 3DS and it would break, and again they were just out whatever they'd bought. So Nintendo's like, okay, we'll solve this problem. We'll make a Nintendo account, and you can register for this, and that account is region locked.
And by the way, it's region locked.
So, so, so I bought the Canadian 3DS, moved to the US. They start this program. I register for it, and now my DS is region locked to the US. So I'm back in Canada, and the only way that I can buy games for it is I can buy a physical game. But I think I mentioned this a couple times ago. Like now that games don't come with like physical books
You're a lot less
and
motivated
maps and
to,
all that
yeah.
stuff, I don't really like buying the physical stuff anymore because I move a lot
Hmm.
and it just takes up space and I have to pay to move it around the world, and so I prefer to buy digital. So so the only way I can buy
Summarize
games,
with a sigh.
yeah, so the only way I can buy games for that now is I can buy them physically in the store, and that's what I did for Fire Emblem.
Hmm.
Or I have to go onto like Amazon with my American Amazon account, and I can buy the digital download code there, and then I can use the download code in the Nintendo store.
Nice.
But I don't have an American credit card anymore, so I can't do anything directly through the Nintendo store.
Right. Well, I have for what it's worth, I have exactly the opposite problem with my 3DS because I got it in Canada, registered
Yeah,
everything, set everything up, and then moved here. So
yeah.
same problem, right? Um,
And I guess your problem's worse because I don't think they sell download codes in the Canadian Amazon, do they?
I haven't explored. I don't know.
I don't think they do.
Yeah. I
For anyone that's in America, Amazon sucks in Canada. there's just there's
It
just
always
not
has.
there's just not near. I mean, for the longest time, you could really only get books.
Yeah.
Uh, and I remember being frustrated because you could buy CDs and movies and video games and stuff in the U.S., but you could get books in Canada.
Yeah. And
So
they remain constantly just outpaced. Like I don't. Can you get
yeah,
Amazon Prime in Canada?
you can get Prime, but
But I think it's
um,
limited to certain cities or something. I don't know.
yeah, well, th- no, I think they are starting to limit it. For the longest time, it was cheaper for people to buy their groceries on Amazon if they lived in like rural Nunavut because it was free Amazon Prime shipping
Right.
versus like hundreds of dollars for shipping to because you have to bring stuff up by airplane
Yeah.
specifically for a town of like 100 people.
Yeah.
So,
They're
so for
cracking
the
down.
yeah, so they've started cracking down on that, and you can't get free shipping through Prime there anymore
Hmm.
because yeah, like everyone just started buying their groceries in there, and it was like Amazon was losing money by doing that.
Yeah, that's funny. Just going back to two quick things while I'm thinking of it about the PSP. It's not
Yeah,
really related to the topic at hand, but for me, my experience with the PSP, my friend gave me one for free because he didn't need it anymore. It
yeah,
was quite new, or at least unused, and he gave me like a bunch of games with it. And one of the games was it was the Castlevania
yeah, yeah.
remake, And so I played that.
So the one that has Symphony of the Night isn't unlockable?
Yeah, it also has the original version of itself as an unlockable. So I played it. I played it until I unlocked the original version, and then I just beat the whole original version.
That's what I did too.
And then I put away the PSP forever.
Well, I did that. I beat the original instead of the remake. But I also unlocked Castlevania because that's the Saturn version that has Maria in it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the pristine copy I own and cherish. So, I actually have the Saturn disc.
Yeah. So I played through that version as well.
Yeah. And you played through the extra hallway, the whole single extra hallway they added to the map.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I played that. I don't have very many PSP games. I got Final Fantasy Crisis Core.
Oh, yeah.
Which I enjoyed.
I think I have that. I have a bunch that I should look at. Actually, I have. They have
the games that I had were solid.
Yeah. It's not that I don't like the system. I don't know. I just never. I kind of just. I should actually.
The battery life is pathetic on it. So.
Yeah, I don't really. I mean, we talked about it a bit, but I was playing in my carpool and kind of gaming outside a little bit. But these days, I typically play games at home only, so. Yeah. It's less of a concern for me, that's for sure. My other thing, though, just the PSN account problem, I don't remember exactly, but I remember when I first moved to the States, there's this big issue of, tax residency. And Canada... So the States is interesting because if you're in the country for more than 180 days in 1 year, you're a tax resident. That's it. It's a number. You can count it. Done. Yeah. Canada has this bonkers... subjective point system where different you're probably familiar with this, but different
if you maintain bank accounts or
different things give you some amount of points that is not public, and
it's weird because you can write a letter to get advice as to whether or not you're a tax resident.
I know, and it's advised you don't, because you're basically providing information that you haven't been asked for. So I'm aware.
But not only that, but whatever advice they give you isn't binding.
They could say you're fine and decide later you are a tax resident, right?
Yeah.
So I just went crazy and cut everything. I thought I was going paranoid crazy, but I was worried that they'd look at my account, my Gmail, and if it was registered to a Canadian address, I'd be a tax resident. Just going crazy. So I remember
that's definitely overboard.
Yeah, it was crazy. But with PSN, especially being that it's a credit card, even though I canceled the credit card, the fact that it's registered there, I don't know. In my mind, I was this is evidence that I'm maintaining residency. So I think I might have actually gone in and full on, I don't know, deleted the account or something. I don't really remember. So I might have messed that all up on my own.
I mean, it's possible you got screwed because of hacks or something too. Because I know there were PSN hacks, and you had to reset your password and stuff. So
that also happened.
I don't know if you needed to have your original credit card number to be able to reset your account and stuff.
I am not sure.
They do that with Apple, and that's really frustrating because
it is frustrating.
I've got a Canadian account and an Australian account and an American account.
I also have a Canadian and American account. I can tell a story about that. However, that time has come. I'm looking at the baby monitor, and somebody's standing up and making noise by the looks of it. So
all right.
I should probably jet.
Okay.
Little bit of a shorter discussion this time, but hopefully it's we covered the main points, I think.
Yeah, there's only so far you can go with talking about how annoying it is to live in different countries, and
I don't know, man. I can complain.
All the people that have lived in one city their whole life are just going to tune out.
In a way, lucky them. Ignorance is bliss. But in a way, lucky us, I guess.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, man. Well, have a wonderful week.
All right, you too.
Cheers.
Cheers.